Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. We're back with another incredible episode of On the Subject. I'm your host, Michael Villardo, and today we have an incredibly special guest, a unicorn founder, someone who has been able to do so much in and out of education, and I can't wait to hear his opinions on how it shaped him into the person he is today. An exceptional leader, founder, friend, and mentor, founder of VideoAmp, Ross McCray. Thank you for joining us today, Ross.
Thank you. What an intro. All right.
Now, we're excited. So let's just jump right into it. So you and I have one thing in common for sure. Yes, we're both founders, and obviously so much I've been able to learn from you and so impressed, but we also are Bruins. However, you were undergrad, I was graduate, but you didn't end up finishing, did you? Can you just jump in right away? What happened there?
A lot happened. I think I dropped out 4 times.
So was this the same year, different years? Like,
No,
tell the audience more about
across
this.
multiple years, yeah. So I got into UCLA to study math and astrophysics, and within probably the first 2 or 3 days, I spoke to one of my mentors in the math department, and I was like, I thought this would be a lot better and different, and this seems to just be like more of the same. And he told me, don't let school get in the way of your education. And after that, I just really was like, I remember this. So then I spent most of my time just trying to figure out ways to make a lot of money, and just school was just there because it was kind of giving me some free money because my parents didn't make a lot of money, and so I was the financial aid kid. So it was kind of incentivized for me to stay in school. But then I made an idea. I thought it was it. I was certain I was going to pop off. Dropped out. It failed. Went to 0, and then I reapplied back to school, and then did that probably. I did that 4 times across like 2 or 3 years.
So I love hearing more about your passion for how school maybe hasn't served you. I love what you said, don't let school get in the way of your education. Education is such an agnostic word, and so many people try to put folks in a box. And so, one thing that we're really passionate about is, self-discovery. How do you really figure out what's your most fulfilling path? So it sounds like, did you grow up in Los Angeles, California? You always wanted to go to UCLA? Was that your dream school? Being in California, it's very hard to get into. Talk about your path to try to get into UCLA and how it may have let you down.
Yeah, so I grew up in Southern California. I spent most of my time in Orange County before I went to UCLA. I was going to UC Irvine, actually, while I was in high school to take some classes.
So dual credit enrollment.
Yeah,
Awesome.
So I was doing that for a bit, and then I went to UCLA. But no, UCLA wasn't my target school. I wanted to go to one school, and that was the only school I wanted to get into. And I got into every single school, every Ivy League, every whatever school, except for the one I wanted to get into.
Which is?
MIT.
MIT,
and
wow.
I didn't
okay.
even know
so
why.
So you wanted to do MIT over the Ivy League. Why?
I had no idea what I wanted to do, right? I just like some nerdy kid who was like, MIT is the place where all the nerds go. I'm like, that's where I want to go. And I'd never even been there, right? My parents couldn't afford to go to Boston. I didn't even know where it was. And then when I got denied, I was so upset for like a week. And then I said, well, I'm just going to go to UCLA because it just seemed cool.
So what were your parents like? What did they do? What was your cultural upbringing? Like, how did that shape you?
Yeah. So my mom grew up in Baghdad, and she moved over here when she was young adult. And that was the real beginning of my kind of forming of education. So she was very strict and very much about you're going to have to work hard and be different because she came from more torn backgrounds and we didn't have any money. So it was the kind of typical foreign parent who's like, you got to do better than we did kind of thing. So ever since I can remember, I would go to school, preschool, kindergarten, elementary school, and then I would come home and I would do my mom's school. And she would sit me down for 4 hours, at least 5 hours a day, just doing her own workbooks. I would go to school, I'd play a sport, and I would do my mom's school and go to bed. So I never even played with friends or went outside or went to parks, and I would just do. This is all I knew for a long time. So that's what really kind of led the pace of a lot of my work ethic and discipline.
I love this. So they talk about how parent engagement can really drive a lot of success in a student, in a young adult, and building those skill sets. And then you said you also played sports. How do you view the parent engagement and sports piece in affecting your skill set just as much as the school piece? So how did you be able to, as you reflect now, incredibly successful entrepreneur, great leader, great innovator, product builder, what was the component of school that played a part into it, as well as outside of school parameters that really
School did nothing.
And feel free to be candid. This is what we want to really give the audience.
Yeah,
this is awesome.
Yeah. School was just an inhibitor. So, sports was cool. I mean, but I don't know if my path is like a repeatable one. So when I was younger, I didn't understand it. And so I just saw my friends being able to like go over, spend sleepovers and be a kid. And I didn't understand why I couldn't do that. And it was this way for a long time. And that's how it was. So I would fight my mom all the time. It was like yelling and screaming and not understanding. It was a very passionate environment, every day. But that's all I knew. So that's kind of how intense it was. And the school, because my mom was teaching me so much stuff, and she was just doing like years ahead, right? And it was way more work than the school was. So that basically what happened was when I would go to like second grade, third grade, fourth grade, during math and sciences, they didn't know what to do with me. So they literally just took me outside, and I would be on my own for half the day with a book, and the rest of the kids would stay inside. And I did that for second grade, third grade, fourth grade, fifth grade. So half of my time in school was just on my own because they're like, we don't know what to do with him. So they just kept me outside.
Well, do you think that developed some of your skill set, though, being on your own and having to be self-disciplined?
I think so. But, I mean, I was just, like, sitting around just, like, thinking and doing stuff because I was just kind of bored. And so it wasn't really, like, that was where I felt like I was. But that was where I started to feel like, why is this, why am I different? But it really hit home in middle school. So what happened was then when I got in the sixth grade, at least in our district, that's when they tested you for your ability. And because I was a freak and doing all this math and shit, that they were like, you're like in 11th grade.
Yeah.
And then the school, I didn't notice at the time, but how it happened to me was I got called in the intercom. Ross McCray, come in the principal's office. Everyone's like, ooh, you get in trouble. So like I show up and I didn't know what the hell was going on, and it was my parents there with the principal, and it was like I remember the energy to this day, and it was like very heated, and it was like I heard like 1 or 2 minutes, and basically all I remember was we're leaving the school. They're not supporting you, and you're never coming back.
This is public school?
Public school.
So where'd you go?
And I'm like, what do you mean? And I left and never came back, and you homeschooled me. And so,
wow. So, this is going to be incredible. Our audience is in for such a treat. But before we jump into the homeschool piece, I did want to put a question out to you. Why do you think it is? I mean, it's probably for convenience sake, but this is something I'm really passionate about. Our education system bases everyone based on their age. Mm-hmm. Nowhere else, you get into the adult world, 20, 30, 40, 50 years old, it's much more performance related. But in school, you're set to move at the pace of the slowest student. You're set to move at the pace of folks that are within 12 months of your age range. Do you think that hurts students by being able to go at their own pace? Like, how do we make that better?
Yeah. Well, so, I mean, that's the billion-dollar question. And I think you have to ask why. And I don't think so. In this example, we'll like kind of connect these two things. And in the example of me in elementary school and that middle school, I don't fundamentally think the teachers or the principals were just doing it to spite me. They were like, "Hey, just go and do 7th grade, 8th grade, whatever." They were not set up to be able to take care of people that were materially different than the norm. And as a matter of fact, their incentives are misaligned.
Yes.
And so I think that's probably the root issue, is that the way that schools get funded, the way that teachers get rewarded. I mean, most schools, my understanding is there's no even real reward to do well for your students or even do bad. It's more about tenure-based systems and kind of surviving. And actually, they're incentivized to do the least amount because you aren't making a lot of money in the first place. And so you might have to have a second job or think about work-life balance and just try to minimize your engagement. And what I found out in the future was the schools, at least in high school, they have those like standardized testing, like the exit scores. They get incentivized or they get rewards like whatever, blue ribbon or distinguished school, whatever bullshit is out there based on the averages. So if you're thinking about it smartly, even if you took someone like myself and my job was purely to get my students to have the highest score, think about it this way. The smart kids on those tests, they're so simple, they're getting 99%.
Yeah.
It is like the lowest common denominator.
There's not enough variance.
So if you take a distribution of if you're going to reward the kids who are distinguished, who might actually make a difference or care about it, you will get either 0 uplift or like 1% on a small cohort.
Yeah.
If you focus on the very bottom, who are no-shows, or getting 30%, 40%, you just do the most minimal shit possible, and your
you see more
averages go through
improvement.
so you're actually incentivized to just focus on the kids who don't want to go to school, who aren't trying to be engaged, who aren't even thinking about wanting to do it. So that's where the incentives are, is around that dynamic. So I think the issue is incentives.
Yeah, it's all about incentive alignment. But I really want to hear about this homeschool journey. I had no idea this was your path. So fascinated. How was that for you? Were you able to graduate high school early? Like, how did you go about the homeschool path?
So what happened was I came in and I went to some like shitty little trailer, and it was like, all right, well, you're in 6th grade, and they gave a pack like this big, and it was like, here's 6th grade. Now keep in mind, only thing I was doing, my mom, where I just sat down and I would just grind for like hours, just doing worksheets and shit. So to me, I was like, okay, I'm gonna do this. I finished 6th grade in a month. And then I went back into 7th grade and 8th grade. I remember it was before the holidays.
Yeah.
I finished 6th, 7th, and 8th grade worksheets. And they were like, yeah, you did it. Congrats. And so,
Wow.
And so at that time, I was like, this doesn't make any sense. And so, but separately is when I started to get exposed to computers and the internet. And this was around the time when the internet was like starting. And I got obsessed with it for whatever reason. And I was like, this is sick.
Yeah.
And my
So
parents
much
didn't even understood what a computer was. They were like, what is this wizard machine? And I just got so obsessed with it where I just started to explore. So I didn't do any school for 3 years. I just kicked it online and did my own shit.
Because you finished the 3.
I just like, I'm just going to go online. And I got just obsessed with it. So obsessed where I became like a weirdo. I mean, I dropped all my sports. I stopped seeing my friends. Like, I became a menace to society, like inside. There was a time where I didn't go outside for 6 months. My parents would like, oh, it's Christmas. Let's go see the cousins. I'm like, no, I'm not leaving. Like I was that obsessed with computers, and that's kind of how a lot of that started.
Will you say that obsession, and really obsession is an extreme form of passion, really gave you a lot of fulfillment, even though it may have been borderline unhealthy at that age. The fulfillment, and I love your approach. We talk about, and we're gonna hop around a bit here. Our company, similar to what you were able to build at VideoAmp, we're really big on putting all your effort into fulfillment, and that comes from fulfilling work and really dedicating yourself to work. Why do you think there's such a pushback right now, especially younger generations, on this push for so-called work-life balance, rather than saying, I want to find something that I am obsessed with? Because wouldn't you say when you're obsessed with something, time goes faster and you get more enjoyment than saying trying to become a serial hobbyist?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's the dream, and I think this is another area where school doesn't serve you. I mean, the topics of school are also useless, in my opinion. Like, to me, that would be a great topic. Hey, how do you figure out what to do in life to be fulfilled, to be happy, and to have freedom, but also be able to to understand you have bills to pay and you have obligations. You want to have a family. Well, guess what? Like, you got to pay bills. And so, like, that would be a great course.
Yeah.
Instead, I remember it being like history courses of like some old white guy, William Wallace, running over a hill in like 1500 or whatever. Like, I don't care. He doesn't do anything for me, right? I got bills to pay. I'm trying to have fun. I'm trying to learn how to like navigate life, and I'm sitting here learning about the most useless piece of information. So I think not only is the system set up in a way where it's not self. Why I love the internet was because I was on my own pace. Like, I'm learning for me, and I'm doing this on pace. Like, I don't need I'm doing my own thing. But then, and also the content and the curriculum of what you're interested in. So for me, like, that's the double whammy, is that not only is the incentives the wrong way, not only is it customized for you, but it's not your own pace, but the content itself is very rarely what people need to have a fulfilling, happy life in day to day. How do you be mindful? How do you find a happy life? How do you have good communication with people? How do you have good relationships? How do you imagine that kind of class where you're like going through scenarios of like how to have the courage to speak up front, or to be honest with yourself, or even today's society about how to navigate the negative social media dynamics and dopamine rushes, and just your mental health is you're seeing the mental health for kids dropping. You're seeing people leaving school. You're seeing suicide rates increase. It's such a bad. You're seeing engagement go down the roof, and all we're talking about is that guy William Moss going over the hill. It's like, get out of my face.
Yeah, I love the passion. I completely agree that there's a lot of content that could be updated. And so, when we talk about content, we're all about premium video, short form, meeting students where they're at. Would you say for you, those years trapped inside on your own fruition on the computer was more influential than your experience in that public school?
Yeah, by like 1,000 times.
So, okay, so yeah, that's exact. So by 1,000 times, how do we bring that opportunity to more students? What do we have to do as a society? Because you're right, and that's why we always talk about we want to help students no matter what zip code they're born into. There's so much of the human lottery at stake. You know, who are your parents?
Yeah.
What teachers are at your public school?
Yeah.
Are there any sports at your public school? What are your classmates like? What's your peer engagement? How do we change that?
I mean, this is a great question. I mean, for starters, I'm a parent.
Yeah.
I have 4 kids, and I am not the person who's like, oh, I'm going to put my kid in school and I'm going to trust that they're going to just handle it perfectly. You know, ironically, I think I actually probably have a lot of trust in the system.
4 kids gonna go to
No. So like for me, it's this every day. I'm scared shitless for this, and for me, I'm thinking about it as I gotta take accountability and ownership for my children's education. I'm not outsourcing this to a system that I think is fundamentally flawed and hasn't been improved in hundreds of years. Like, no way. So I think for starters, if you're asking me as a parent,
what are you gonna do?
Parents need to take accountability for this. This is not something where you just trust that the system is going to do it. They're not set up correctly. They don't have the funding. They're not set up correctly. There's systemic issues with it. And you have to start there, in my opinion. And you have to ask to do more. And that's where I think it starts and stops there, in my opinion.
Are you going to homeschool, private school? What's your approach right now?
Yeah, look, I am.
How old are they?
I got a 4.5-year-old, 3.5-year-old, and twins.
So the
at 6
oldest
months.
is about to enter said potential system. What's your approach right now? Where are you leaning?
Yeah. So to kind of go back to where I was like, I don't know if what I did is repeatable.
Yeah.
So I am not a fan of what happened to me, right? I think I got lucky. Right.
But you worked really hard and created.
I got lucky, but it came with all kinds of mental problems too, right?
Yep.
And other things that we got to get into when I had to navigate my entire life, when I'm still trying to
it's
navigate
tough.
through it's a whole nother podcast.
Yeah.
So
episode 2 coming soon.
So for me, I'm trying to take the lessons of what I thought was good, but try to remove like the negative parts of it, and try to do it in a more healthy way. It's more comprehensive. So integrating in where you're thinking about emotional development, you're integrating into about how are you in a diverse environment. And so, I mean, I grew up with no money, so public school was the only option. Yep. Now I'm fortunate we have money so I can afford private schools, but then I'm nervous about just the bubble part of it. So for me, I haven't figured it out yet, but I can tell you it's going to be a hybrid. It's going to be a hybrid of some schooling. It doesn't mean I'm going to go and take the kids in school for every single day of the week, but some engagement where maybe we do very long trips in certain places, or we do school half the time and other half the time we're doing our own supplementation, and being really mindful about that. It's going to be some sort of category of this is what I think we're going to do.
So why don't we speak to those kids like yourself out there, the kids who have no money, who their only option is to elevate themselves through more self-discovery. This is a student that we're really passionate about, is this type of student who we can help be engaged and go to new heights that maybe without subject they never would have the opportunity to. So how did you find that self-discovery and will within you, and how could we get it out of more of our students?
Yeah, I think great question. I mean, I think we spoke about the parents, but going to the students, I mean, maybe you're right. Maybe I think students is certainly another area where you have to start with. But it comes down to the how aware are they of the problem? Yep. How mindful are they? How passionate they are. So students and parents, it's somewhere in there. A combination is important. But I think educating the students about the opportunity is also important. I mean, I think if you go to maybe times have changed, but at least you go to my ass or you go to my, call it, students aren't like, yeah, I'm going to school. I'm excited to go and do the school. I think they're aware that the school sucks. And
most of them view it as a chore. They view it as a chore.
They want to hang with their friends. They do it, but I mean, most, again, maybe I'm wrong.
Most are not vocal about it as well. And we always talk about that. We're always working with districts, and we're so thankful for our partners. Most students aren't going to say, oh wow, subject is so much better. I'm going to march to my principal's office and make sure they use subject instead of the
Right.
legacy player.
Right.
Because most students view school as a status quo. It's a chore. I have to do it. I just want to get through it, and I don't really mind too much.
But I think that's the opportunity. Is I
Yeah.
think reframing it to the kids is what I'm trying to say. It's
Making
like,
them more vocal.
Yeah, I mean, like, and just more aware, right? It's like, look, you're about to go into the world, okay? You're about to go into the system. You're in the matrix. You're gonna go and you think getting A's and getting this shit's gonna matter, and then you're gonna go to school. You're gonna go get in debt, and you're gonna go into some bullshit, and then you're gonna go and probably work a job because your parents or someone said you should go do this, and then you're gonna do this and be a monkey for the next 10 years, and you're not gonna be able to get a down payment on a house until you're like 80 and you're dead, and you're like, it's like, this is just not okay, right? I think people need to understand, like, this is a trap. This is not something that you want to get into. And so in my opinion, there are probably a cohort of students who are under the guise that success is like getting grades and going and getting in debt and then going and working really hard and like being a doctor and spending 20 years to break even. Like, this shit's insane, right? And so I think I don't know how many people are aware of the reality of how much money you can make or what's possible or different kinds of life you can live. So I think an awareness campaign regarding the potential of how you can live a life and how you don't have to just go down one track into sadness is something that is probably a place to start. And then subject is a way that you can get ahead of that. You can learn new skills. You can get ahead of yourself. You can get more educated. And it's not about school, it's about education. And the more use this time when you don't have bills, when you don't have other responsibilities, like, you know, probably most kids don't have other kids or other things to work through. And so this is your time to shine, and maybe make that where it's kind of a cooler thing to do versus like just what's cool now is, you know, other things. And that could be a place to start.
I like where you're putting it, make it a cool thing to do. We always talk about that. And you even just described yourself at one point in your life as a nerd. I don't think many people would, especially at first glance, assume that is you today. But as an adult, the nerds really are able to earn the most amount of capital, most amount of freedom, control their day-to-day. But in high school, middle school, and even potentially earlier, you get a lot of peer scornment. It's a very negative connotation. Making it cool is a great approach, and I love that opportunity for us. I think one thing I definitely want to hear more about is, do you think any mentor or feedback really was valuable to you, or did you get the most just internal reflection? Because it sounds like you're not a huge believer in the current collegiate system. Why is that, and where would you, if you were an average high schooler, because you know you obviously have an exceptional ability and it's great to be able to hear your story. If you were an average high schooler, what would you do after high school?
And when I was in high school or after high school, you're saying, did I have a mentor back then?
Yeah, so is there any key influence in your life?
No, I didn't have a lot back then. I mean, I think I was a pretty,
So you got it from yourself, though. So you can, you know, and I want everyone listening out there, whether you're an adult or a student, understand that, you know, the power of within is so special, and if you take agency over your whole life, you can have an incredible opportunity. You know, whether it's with subjects, YouTube, there's so many opportunities to invest in yourself.
I think what happened is, like, it's very definitive in my mind that my mother and the discipline of, it's not about the work. I forgot everything I did, right? But it was about the discipline and the awareness to kind of get things done. That then, when I started to find something I liked, in this case it was the internet.
To computers.
It was computer science. I applied that discipline, and it because I wanted to do it. It was insanity, right? And I was so obsessed in the happiest and just pure joy because I was able to use my ability to focus and get through a lot of things and learn to learn. Like, I was very good. Like, I spent so much time learning that I learned the art of learning, and I was applying that into what I cared about. And that's why I've always liked math for what it's worth. It's not because I'm ever really using these math these days. It's because of the logical ways to like apply your skills into things. And so I think for students, if you're able to learn, it doesn't matter whether you're learning a certain subjects today, if that can be applied into what things that you care about, and even being aware about things that are your passion. And I think a lot of kids, when they're leaving school, I don't know what I want to do. I'm confused. I don't know what I'm passionate about, because you're not exposed to a lot of things. You have to be exposed to stuff. You have to go out and explore and see what's possible. And usually they're just seeing what their friends are saying. And everyone's a lemming, right? I want to go be a messed up banker. It's like everyone says the same dumb things, and it's like they don't even thinking for themselves, and they don't even know why they're thinking about it. And I mean, that was my case when I went to my math classes. I mean, I was sitting in math. I remember I would go out and I would ask everybody, like, "What are you doing? Why are you doing this major?" And it was like, "Oh, I don't know." Like my mom, like it was like you're not even awake, right? They're just so used to being told what to do, they're not even thinking for themselves. So I think opening your mind and thinking for yourself, so taking accountability for that, and that's fun. You have that aliveness. So I think you have to just realize that.
Yeah, you can't dream it unless you know it. I always talk about that. If you don't see it or know it, you're not going to even have the ability to dream it. And so it's really important to get exposure. If you were in high school, again, someone who's more middle of the road, whether you call it student or professional ability, would you go to college, trade school, work for someone as an assistant or apprentice? Like, what would your approach be?
Yeah, I mean, I love college for partying. I mean, anything, if you're going to college, let's put it this way. Take it back. You don't have to go to college. Because when I dropped out, I was still going to college parties, right? You don't have to pay to get in debt to go and have a good time, right? But being in the vicinity is not a bad experience. So I think like there's an experience of like, yeah, you want to do that. But for me, and also, by the way, you don't have to even go and pay for school to take the classes. For what it's worth.
You could just show up.
You just show up.
And or audit,
Yeah, you just show up. Like the degree is the biggest waste of time on the planet. I've hired over 2,000 people, maybe more. You know how many times we check if you have a degree? And my friends, like, no one ever checks if you have a degree. Like, it's just the biggest rooch, So like,
I want to jump in there.
Why pay?
I don't necessarily disagree. I know there's value in arguments on both sides of the coin, but I think, and I'm sure you'll have a contrarian opinion, so I'm excited to see how you respond to this. The signaling device of the school you got into. Now, I know some may come across elitist or such, but getting into, like, even your story, UCLA dropout, it's a better story than saying some random school we've never heard of dropout when you go to raise capital. Now, if you were successful, you're going to make it no matter what, but would you not agree that, and maybe this is weaponized too much, but Harvard or Stanford dropout does get more credibility in the professional world than someone who went to a no-name university? Whether it's right or wrong.
Well, I think it always comes down to the individual.
Yes.
Right. I think that is what you hear about, because that's the more common, success story. But there are people who don't even go to college because they're already making hundreds of millions of dollars, or like losers. There's levels to this, and so it all depends on your ability to execute and what you're able to do, right? So someone who doesn't even have to do it in the first place is what investors are probably is the echelon. Yes. But I don't want to say that to be like, yeah, drop out of high school, and you're gonna, because
do not drop out of high school, please.
Because it's about you have to be prepared to do the work. And when I do see a lot of kids, they're like, I'm gonna drop out, then they don't have a discipline. They're playing video games all day. They're literally partying all the time. They're sleeping in. They're doing nothing worth their time. Yeah. And they're like, yo, I'm gonna go start a company. And I'm like, well, how much time are you spending building the company? Yeah. And I'm seeing their log, and they're half the time they're high, other half the time they're with the friends. It's like, you're not doing anything. So this is the problem, is like there's just a lure of like, if you just drop out, you can go and you're going to go and make it, but you're not putting in the work. But also at the same time, there's this trap of saying, I'm just going to go and go to school and everything's going to be okay. So you have to, you have to have some thoughtfulness around here. So I'm not pro anything. It just depends on the person, but you should just know why you're doing what you're doing. But you do not need to go to school for education. You really don't, but you need to have the discipline to do that, and that's hard to do. And so if you don't have that ability, then I would rather have you go to school versus watching TV all day and not knowing how to do it. Is probably a better use of your time. But it depends. And I wouldn't put too much effort into the school name or profile and this and that. It doesn't matter. And however, if you are going into a very legacy field and you want to go into a old you're going into finance, you're going into legal, you're going anywhere that's really stuffy and miserable, go ahead. Like, go and get in the debt and go do all that, because they do care about that. If you're going into anything that is entrepreneurial, you're going into creativity, you're going into anything in more modern fields, engineering, being an artist, you don't need this stuff at all. And it's all about your time and effort and how much you're going to be learning. And so I would optimize to self-learning, online learning, things like Subject. Yes. Going into other places, learning by doing real work and experience is infinitely more important. Working, getting internships, doing free work, doing trade schools, having hands-on experience is so much more important than theory for a lot of people.
Yeah, I love the passion. I think, and we have a lot of alignment and synergy. I think there's a huge opportunity to have more optionality post high school. I still believe that, the top school is going to be a great signal, but definitely understand there's more nuance to that. But I think the big piece we're really passionate about and why we care so much at Subject is high school, whether people like it or not, your 14, 15-year-old, performance, and this is a scary thing, it affects a lot of your next steps in life. And so high school, we really want to be able to help these students have more self-discovery, know what they want to do after high school, fall in love with learning, and really get better as a learner. And so to your point, get better every day. We just want to make sure we get to leave with one last question. You've been so passionate, love the stories, love the energy. If you were to do it all over again, and I guess you're sort of doing this as a kid, so I don't want this to be duplicative, but when you were pulled out of public school and thrown into those packets, and then you had the computer experience, what would you change about your own experience if you had to do it all over again? You've obviously turned out incredible, and you're able to inspire and change the world. But in terms of education, what do you wish the education system would have done better by you?
I mean, I think if it was able to help expose me, like, again, I got lucky, right? Like, the amount of times where a kid has 3 years to do nothing,
that's a lot,
but self-learn in something that they're extremely passionate about is rare. So, like, but if that wasn't the circumstance, I feel like that's the kind of like, how much time is the kid taking control of their own learning path and their curriculum, and how much do they have a say on what they want to do and be exposed. And so I'm so fortunate, and I feel so lucky to be exposed in this industry, in this field, and now I do a lot of things, and I'm using more software engineering as kind of a layer, an infrastructural layer to do other things. But you never know. Maybe I would have been equally passionate about other things that I wasn't exposed to. So I think if school systems can really treat the child as more of an adult and really give them the opportunity to be exposed to more things, and teaching them how to learn, and teaching them generic skills, and preparing them for life, those would be, I think, much more beneficial than the current curriculum. And so anything that goes into those areas, I think would have been very helpful. And even things like the mental health and how to deal with people and community, and how to be happy, and how to be authentic, and how to feel like you don't have to pretend to be somebody, or to become popular, or how people's opinions of you differ. Like, these are things that are really bubbling up right now that I think the school should take more accountability to help fix for the mental psyche of the children, and that I think that would be a good place to start.
Yeah, at the end of the day, we're in the business of helping adults have the most fulfilling life possible and be contributing members of society, and there's a lot that we can improve, and we're really excited that Subject can play a big part of that mission. But this was amazing. What an incredible episode. Ross McCray, founder, CEO, VideoAmp, is an incredible leader. Incredible to have him on the pod, and you already heard it here first. There's going to be a second one coming soon, and so we're really lucky to have you today. Thank you so much for your time today,
man.
Ross.
Pleasure. Thank you, brother.
Thank you.